Chapter 10. It got so that every day John and I would go over the Pigman's after school and have a glass of wine and conversation. It was routine by the time the Christmas holidays came around, and it was nice to have some place to go besides the cemetery when it was cold out. Masterson's Tune is an escapist dream in the summer, but it's a realist nightmare in December. Where have you been? I told you the Latin Club was meeting today, and then I missed the bus coming home. I went right into the bedroom and took off my coat. Did I see you in a car today? My mother asked, coming to the doorway to watch my reaction. I was waiting for you to go to the store. When you didn't come home, I walked down myself, and I saw a girl in a car that looked just like you. She was holding the large coffee cup and stirring nervously. It wasn't me. I didn't think it was. You know very well what I'd do if I ever caught you in a car. Yes, Mother. Be a good girl and iron my uniform, will you? I came home late last night, she went on, following me into the kitchen, and the girl down the street was in a car, necking like a slut. Maybe she's engaged to that boy. I don't care. Just don't let me catch you in a car if you know what's good for you. I got some shrimp chop suey from the Chinese restaurant. I saved yours, but get the uniform done first. She always warns me about getting into cars and things like that. When she goes to work on a night shift, she constantly reminds me to lock the doors and windows, and sometimes she calls on the phone if she gets a chance and tells me again. Beware of men is what she's really saying. They have dirty minds, and they're only after one thing. Rapists are roaming the earth. But now I understand her a little. I think the only man she really hates is my father.
You're good at shelter-in-place?
Yes. Even though he's dead, I don't think she'll ever be able to forgive what he did to her. She used to put me through the story at least twice a year. How when she was pregnant with me, her doctor called and told her my father had some kind of disease, and she didn't let him touch her until he got rid of it. It turned out that he had a girlfriend on the side, and that's when she filed for legal separation. Everyone was surprised because they had been childhood sweethearts, as the expression goes. It must have been awful for her when she found out about him. She never talks about him now, just how awful men are in general. She's what the psychologists call fixated on the subject. There's one picture of my mother and father in an album, which is how I like to remember them. He's wearing a football uniform, a handsome young man with his arm around her. She's wearing one of those funny raccoon coats. They're smiling at each other in a grass field somewhere in Stapleton. I've got a run in one of my new stockings last night. I didn't notice it until I washed them this morning. I could tell you from the way she spoke that it was her way of thanking me for giving them to her. Where'd you get the money for them? I told you. Tell me again. I walked to school a few days instead of taking the bus. You said you skipped lunch. And I skipped lunch a couple of times. She mulled that over a few seconds, but she had to get to work on time, and she couldn't devote her full energies to interrogating. She always makes me tell the same story over a week or so later to see if I slip up on any details. When I give you money for the bus, you ride the bus. It doesn't look right for a girl to be walking along the streets. Yes, Mother. It looks like you're trying to get picked up. So all things considered, it was wonderful getting over to Mr. Pignati's for a little dash of wine every day. Please don't bring anything, the pigman always pleaded. Just let me know what you want, and I'll get it for you. I was surprised to see John break down and start buying his own 6-packs of beer. I really was. I had been bringing things like potato chips and pretzels all along simply because I felt funny mooching off Mr. Pignati. We want to bring our own stuff from now on. Whenever we can, John added quickly. So things were really going along fine until one Sunday night in January when there was a snowstorm and the pigman had to go to the zoo. John and I got over the house around 8 o'clock, and we were all set to watch a television show when we noticed Mr. Pignati was sad as all get out. I don't even want to tell you this part, but one of us has to. It's very depressing. It really is. The minute we walked into the house, I knew there was something wrong with him. He looked sick, just worn out and sick. Even though he was trying to smile, and you could tell he was feeling low. I told him to stay in his chair and I'd get the refreshments, and he looked rather grateful for my offer. Bobo wouldn't eat today, he said, forcing a weak smile. I offered him a chocolate bar, and he just let it drop outside the cage. I went out to the kitchen and left John and the pigman watching some kind of TV spectacular, the theme of which was Hooray for Hollywood. Hoorah. Is that hoorah or hooray? Hoorah, because hooray has 2 O's. Hoorah for Hollywood. Everybody was in it, so I knew it was going to be a strenuous bore. Bobo's getting old, I heard Mr. Pignotti say as I served him a glass of wine. John had a can of beer, and I just didn't feel like anything at that moment. Who? John asked, not moving his eyes from the TV screen. Bobo. I sat in a creaky wooden chair near the window, and I could feel a terrible draft. Outside the snow was falling, and it looked very pretty. There were a lot of pine trees, and the snow was sticking to them. It dawned on me then what a strain it must have been on Mr. Pignotti to have trudged all the way down to see that baboon. He had even shoveled the walk outside, which I knew was for us. And just at that moment, and for no reason at all, I remembered the old lady at Chambers Street saying, "Death is coming." "Anybody hungry?" I asked, going out to the kitchen again without waiting for an answer. I came back with some candy on a plate. All I wanted was to cheer everybody up. The TV was certainly doing the best it could, with a blonde starlet singing, "Hoorah for Hollywood, la-da-da-da-dum," as 200 chorus boys lifted her up into the air. "Have a piece of candy," I asked, offering the plate to John. He was so hypnotized by that starlet, he simply reached over and grabbed a piece and stuck it in his mouth without looking. Then a comedian finally told a joke we laughed at. "John," I whispered, "I think right now is a good time." I got up and turned the TV down and waited for John to start. He looked very nervous over what we had decided to tell the pigman. "Mr. Pignotti?" "Yes." "Mr. Pignotti, there's something Lorraine and I think we should tell you." Mr. Pignotti looked very serious and worried. "Just tell him, John." "Well, Mr. Pignotti," he started, taking a big puff on his cigarette, "Lorraine and I have something on our consciences that we thought you ought to know about." "Will you just tell him?" He took another puff of his cigarette. "You've been so nice to us that we want to be honest with you." "Yes," Mr. Pignotti said, sitting forward in his chair. "You see, Mr. Pignotti, we're not charity workers." He just stared at us. "We're high school kids," John added a little nervously. "We're sorry we lied to you." The pigman looked so sad, and it didn't seem like it was just because of our confession. It seemed like there was so much more going on in his mind. We'll stop there.